Hi, everyone. So, welcome to a little presentation on training and education strategies specific to RCR, or what we call research, responsible conduct of research. You also may hear the term RECR, responsible and ethical conduct of research. So, this is just kind of strategies and way to structure an RCR training. And so, really, what we're going to do is really describe the role that education and training promotes in a ways to improve our research culture. So, you may be aware that kind of the inherent motivation for responsible conduct of research is to really foster this environment, this culture where researchers are engaging in high quality, high ethical research. When we look at the literature in regarding organizational culture, we know that one of the best ways to promote a certain type of culture within an organization is through training and education. So that's the foundation for this training today. In addition, I want to give you a little tool, a little educational framework that can be applied to your institution in training programs. So there's a lot out there about educational frameworks, pedagogy. I'm a big nerd on that. I could talk about that for hours. And a lot of these frameworks are rather complicated, or they're talking about classical education, experiential education. Today, I'm going to focus on a very simple framework that you could hopefully apply to your situation. And then throughout this, going to give suggestions on reflective activities to think about your own institution's RCR program and research and compliance and ethics education and how that can be applied to the setting. In addition, going through these reflective activities almost like a parallel process where you're going to be understanding this educational framework through these activities. And then again, with that understanding, hopefully you can apply that within your own institution. So, what I want to start with, and this is an activity used quite a bit when I am teaching RCR and research ethics, is starting connecting with our why. So, what I mean by that is really reflecting on why are we doing this or why are we in this field? So, again, for many of us, we did not, grow up thinking we're going to get into research ethics or research compliance. For the most part, it's some sort of field that we stumbled upon, and we may have switched careers to enter this field as well. So, what can be helpful first is thinking about how did you find yourself in the field of research compliance, RCR, or research integrity? In addition, we could take this question and morph a little bit when we're teaching RCR classes. Again, responsible conduct of research classes, we're teaching researchers. And so it can be helpful when we're starting this training. And again, for many institutions, this RCR training is a requirement, so there may be some resistance coming from participants. Starting with the why, having people reflect on why they got into research and science in the first place can really help them connect to their passion and interest. And so, related to that, too, we can think about what are their specific moments, challenges, or aha experiences that solidified your commitment to this work. So in this moment, we can think of the work related to research compliance, or we can also morph this to think about the work as a researcher, as a scientist. When using these activities, I found too that it's not uncommon for researchers to talk about reflecting on their experience as a child. Maybe they're really curious about an anthill, and that really kind of paved the way for them to understand and study biology. Maybe there was questions about human nature and having aha moments of how humans act or behave, or the complexities of that behavior that led them into the social sciences. So, again, many times when we're exploring these whys, we're understanding the passion and the interest that people are looking for. It can be really helpful trying to find that passion again, especially in the environment we're in now related to research. It is very stressful. As we know, research is very hyper competitive, and there can be a strong pressure going back to the famous term of publish or perish. There's an expectation to really push about the quantity of one's work, and sometimes that quantity overshadows the quality of the work. In addition to science, especially in the United States, is experiencing a lot of disruption, and there's a lot of stress that many researchers are experiencing because there's a lot of unknown arising for that. Now, exploring the why is not going to possibly solve those unknowns or the hyper-competitive nature of research, but it does give some sort of respite to that confusion and can give a new mindset of focusing on the passion we have rather than all the complexity and disruptions we may be experiencing. So, the final element to think about with your why, beyond ensuring compliance, what is the core mission or deeper purpose that drives you in the role today? So, again, many of us who are working in research compliance, we have a lot of passion for research. Many of us come from backgrounds of research. Some of us may not, but again, there is a passion that many of us believe within research compliance, the vitalness and importance of research. And many of us see it as an auxiliary role to help researchers achieve their goals. So, as I mentioned too, when we look at organizational studies, we're trying to study organization. There's a common term that comes up about research culture or organizational culture. And essentially, what a research culture is it contains the norms, the values, the behaviors, and mindsets that influence high quality, ethical, and collaborative research. Essentially, a research culture within our institution impacts who does a type of research. Are we at an institution that promotes undergraduate research, or are we at an institution that may not see the purpose of undergraduates leading research, projects? In addition, what type of research is done? Are we predominantly social behavioral, biomedical, animal research, etc.? How the research is done. Again, do we emphasize quality over quantity, or is a publish or perish a strong motivation for our institution? And when does research occur? If when you look at a lot of universities, especially in the United States, we see ebbs and flows of research submissions for the IACUC, the IBC, the IRB, and even grant submissions, depending on the grant cycle. All of those elements really influence how research is done at an institution. And again, when we go back to the requirements of RCR, many of these requirements tend to come from the federal agencies. And the core of it is to promote responsible conduct of research. So again, training and education, such as RCR, can play a very vital role in promoting effective research cultures. Not to put pressure on RCR instructors, but the role we have is if we provide high quality instruction, the hope is that's going to translate to promote a high quality research culture. So here's some educational frameworks to talk about. The frameworks are essentially three components. There's first the understand. We're sharing information or understanding the purpose of that information of why we're having that training, followed by imagine what is possible with this training. And then we end that conversation with taking what could be possible and finding a way to implement or take some sort of action to make that training, that imagination real and kind of concrete. So the first component is understand. So from this perspective, again, this is going to be a parallel process where right now I'm going to be focusing on research compliance and structures, research compliant instructors. And then really, again, we can take that focus and talk about areas of understanding for researchers. So right now, when we're talking about people who teach RCR, it can be really helpful to understand the training requirements that we have out there. So when we talk about RCR in the United States, typically the NIH is kind of what we base a lot of our RCR programs on because the NIH has 11 topics in which they require to be covered for RCR. NSF, USDA, DOG, etc., they have additional requirements, but really accept and acknowledge the NIH 11. In addition, for areas of understanding of our own RCR program, what resources do we have? What resources exist internally? Do we have someone who can talk about data management or research security? Are there currently other research ethics or other research compliance programs or trainings that we could tap into that overlap with our RCR program? In addition, what external resources are there? It may be worth looking at local teaching hospitals or other research institutions nearby because there's a good guarantee or a good possibility that they also have an RCR program. And maybe there's some collaborations that can occur of either sharing instructors or cross-promoting training opportunities related to RCR. So with that too, it's helpful to know what type of research occurs at your institution, because depending on the research, it may help you tailor what topics, whether if we're using case scenarios or experiential activities, or even just more, nut and bolts, just providing helpful information and resources. Knowing what research is done at the institution can help you tailor the RCR program. And related to that too is the needs of the research community. Is there certain techniques that researchers want to expand upon in their research practice that could be helpful with RCR? Is there emerging topics, especially related to research ethics? Maybe there's a new biomedical procedure that certain type of individuals at the research center wants to utilize. Maybe that could be an area. And understanding too, the needs of the research community not just come with informational wants or needs, but also kind of modality needs. Is there a certain time of the year or a certain modality, whether it be taking, a 4-hour training and breaking it up into 4 1-hour trainings that would help meet that need? Also, what can be really helpful too is understanding, well, what trainings have been offered or what programs have existed, what has worked or hasn't worked. And then related to that is the tensions and obstacles of this. We all have some sort of aspiration of what we want our RCR program to be, and unfortunately, it's not uncommon for some sort of obstacles to come in the way. So, with that, I want you to take a moment to think about your current RCR program. What are some areas of the program that you have a good understanding of? What are areas that you would like to invest further understanding in? And what tensions and obstacles exist? So, with this kind of understanding framework, we can also morph this for researchers. So, we could just change the language for researchers to think about their current research program, and then what are areas of their research that they really have a good understanding of? What areas would they like to further invest understanding in? Maybe it's a data analysis method, maybe it deals with data management, maybe recruitment strategies, and again, also what tensions and obstacles exist. All researchers know that research usually never goes the way we plan it out to be. That is just the nature of conducting scientific investigations. So, again, tensions and obstacles are going to arise and exist. Understanding those tensions and obstacles give us a really strong foundation to take some sort of exploration of what is possible and then actions based off that possibilities. So, a helpful mindset when building an RCR program at your institution, rather than building something from scratch, start by seeing what already exists. The RCR covers a lot of topics. Talks about authorship, data management, cybersecurity, export control, working in teams. There's a lot of areas to cover. So it can be helpful is understanding, well, what already training opportunities or expertise currently exist rather than starting from scratch. This could be a good, helpful starting point. Next component is imagine. So imagine is again, once we start with the foundation of understanding a certain topic area, we imagine something beyond the information. So, for example, in RCR, we talk a lot about of what good research should look like. Okay, so then the imagine part is what it would look like if we took these standards, these suggestions, and apply that into your own research setting. What would that look like? So, related to RCR, one imaginative explanation or exploration, I should say, how do we go further than the checkbox mentality for RCR? With just the nature of things, it's very easy to just give a prepackaged training, have someone take it, and we check a box. That's great for compliance. But is that necessarily going to impact the culture? May not. May not in the way we want it to. So, what would it look like if we go further past the compliance checkbox? What would it be like if the tensions, maybe managing some sort of those obstacles and tensions that we identified goes from verse, so talking about, the limitations of funding or allocation of resources to an and. So we talk about a good example is we have the compliance versus the flexibility. So how can we have a compliant and flexible RCR program? So what I mean by that, an RCR program that meets the standards of those requirements and also is so flexible to meet the unique needs of our research population. For an institution, we're going to have a lot of various researchers who have a lot of various different needs. So, how can we meet those needs and still be compliant? That's the imagine piece. Related to that, on really understanding what is possible for your context. Every RCR program is going to be different. What works at a large R1 is not going to work at a small regional university. They're going to look different. And then again, really understanding your context. What opportunities are emerging related to that? If we really understand our context, we could see opportunities. Maybe there's a new faculty member or researcher who is well versed in a certain RCR topic, and then they're willing to lead an instruction. That would be fantastic. Always be aware of what is emerging within our context. So, with that, I want to take a moment and think about your ideal RCR program. Okay, not what it currently is, but what you would like it to be. And with that, identify three characteristics that you would want your RCR program to be known for. Do you want to be known for flexibility? Do you want to be known for being the premier when it comes to talking about human subject research for your RCR? Whatever it may be, what are three characteristics that you want it to be known for? So, with that in mind, okay, give a moment for that. Think about those characteristics. The next phase, that now we've kind of ideated, imagined, thought about what could be, is how do we take the could and make it concrete? And that's through implementation. So, simple put, implementation is about taking some sort of action, aka doing something. This is a very simple thing to understand, right? We hear all the time about the importance of taking action. So it's a simple, but it's not easy. This is a thing that can be very difficult. So with that, again, really we want to foster that conversation is how can this knowledge, these ideas we're talking about, be implied? This can be through reflection questions, it can be through group discussion, it can even getting more concrete and using some sort of action plan, whether it be a SWOT analysis, a SMART goals, or even some more detailed prescription of come this time, we're going to be implementing this. And related to that, once the training is done, how can those within the RCR compliance office help assist people with those implementation components? Are we going to foster check-ins or further training opportunities, kind of like modules or boosters, if you will? So again, how do we help support the taking action stage? So with that, what is one thing from today that you could implement next Monday? So really think, again, that call to action from this kind of presentation. What is something that you have thought about, ideated upon, really gave better understanding or imagination of, and how can you put that into action? It can be something very small of even just kind of talking more or trying to explore what areas of RCR exist, not just at your institution, but others. Again, what is one thing that you can implement and do? So here's just some references of the citations I utilized in the study. And thank you for participating in this. And again, think about, what you can do, understand your context, and find ways to imagine what's possible and take those possibilities and make them concrete. Thank you all. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to end my slides right there.